today, with this whole process, this is a process that involves the pencil and then vine charcoal and then color pencil and then oil pastels and then a brush that is a bristle brush that has a nice, is nicely made. And so what does that mean? It just means that if you put your fingers on both sides of this, this would come to a point. This would come together. It wouldn't be just a blunt. It'd be flat here, but it wouldn't be blunt that they all end at the same place. They're kind of tapered together. And I have two of these brushes. One is a little bigger than the other one. This one's a little dirty right now. As soon as you start using them, they'll never be this color again. They'll always have a little bit of a stain from something. And then we have this clear liquid that is odorless mineral spirits, and the one I'm using is the gamsol. It's Gamblin's gamsol, and it is preferred by the schools in the state of California as the least toxic. That doesn't mean it is toxic, but it also doesn't necessarily mean that you should pour yourself a drink, okay? So you want to be careful with it, but it's the best one that you can use of that. And it is good at dissolving both the color pencil, in this case I'm using a very soft colored pencil, and also I'm using the cheapest Junior Artists Crayolas oil pastels, very economical. So we want to first connect, and the connection is going to be done initially with the pencil, and this happens to be a 9B pencil, which means it's one of the softest pencils that there is. And I'm going to put this pencil down, and then I am going to move the pencil in straight and curved lines, and straight lines and curved lines, and straight lines and curved lines. And I'm going to take it everywhere, and I may actually, because we're also going to be using all of our media here to get a feel for what makes space seem near or space seem far, and what makes form seem near or form seem pushed back and far. And so one of the things that makes things pushed back is when things are smaller. And I'm going to do this drawing not so much in a spatial way, like a landscape way, where the things that are close to us are here and the things that are farther away are there. Although I'm getting a feeling like I might try to do it that way, and also do it what I call the aerial view, where you're looking down and the things that are big are kind of floating on top and the things that are small are down further, which makes it imperative that you have some big things and that they overlap some small things. Now, before I even got started, I decided for this one, this series of these same type of materials, and same approach, where we first connect with the paper and we stay connected. So this is where we're leaving our pencil down the whole time. We're not going to make a note of where I'm leaving this. We're not hopping over here and then hopping over there. We're staying connected the whole time. So that's our connect. And the whole thing is in the service of creating, and particularly creating in a way where we create as we go, where it's not preconceived, and we make all these tiny choices all the time about where to go. And they aren't really the kind of choices that one would make in a typical thinking fashion. It's more of an intuitive fashion, and it's more of a spontaneous, just go with whatever flow you're feeling fashion. So I'm simultaneously practicing my straight and curved lines, just alternating, so that the composition, even at the micro level, has both straight and curved lines in it. It also helps me practice strengthening my neurological pathways in order to make myself able to, what they used to say about cars, turn on a dime, meaning I can, let me bring it down here. I can go straight and I can go curved and I can go straight and I can go opposite curve. I can go any way I want. And this will help later with any observational drawing that you might be learning to do or your students might be learning to do, because a lot of times I did find that people have a preference for either making straight lines or curved lines a lot, and that means that their brain and their hand may buck making a curve when they see a curve. Like if they see a curve at the end of a nose and they're just not really set up to curve, they're really set up for straight, they may make that too much of a right angle, or they might make it too big of a curve because they don't like tight curves. So it's really good to get your body in shape. It's kind of like doing your exercises for your body. So here I've done kind of a big straight curve, straight. This is like a shallow curve. Maybe this one's going to be about shallow curves and then straights and then shallow and straights and so forth. And I'm going to leave what's going on down here slightly open with my straight and curve. Open meaning bigger. And that's one of the things, again, that is an element that makes things seem close, and that is when things are big. So there we go. I didn't go over these lines much at all. So now I'm going to further my design, and now I may pick it up, my charcoal. I now have fine charcoal here, and it is the Vine extra soft charcoal, and it's vines that have been burned, and then the burning has been stopped, and they are here for you to play with. And by that I mean it's going to give you quite a bit to work with. It's going to change the quality of your line, because if you want, it's going to be able to, let's say, be thin up here and then be thick down here. See how it's thin and then thick, and then I can thin and then I can go thick like that. And so even with my line now, I'm making it heavier in the front, bigger in the front, and then letting this come back out, maybe even play out with becoming lighter in tonal value as it goes away and heavier down here. I'm going to do that again over here. I'm going to make this really thick down here, and I'm going to take it and smush it off into the distance here. So I'm using the lines that I already had when I worked with my pencil to give me some bones, to give me some structure, to give me something that's already all connected that I can begin to play with and bring into a big floaty shape. People used to be so freaked out when things floated. Oh, your orange is floating. Well, maybe we don't want floating oranges. And yet we could have something that kind of hovers over the whole thing. And I am making these lines back here darker, and I can see if I like them dark, or with Vine charcoal, I can see if I want them lighter. So it's not like having to erase, it's more like finger painting with this. And I can bring some of this charcoal that's fallen off across there. Just kind of trying to pick this up. Not good to wet your paper with picking it up, but it's okay. It's all okay. Nothing bad can happen, by the way. And one of the ways we made this be something that could be possibly pretty successful visually is we're not trying to draw something. We are drawing in the abstract, which does mean that you are making something, but it's going to be non-objective, meaning it's not an object with a name. And here I'm just going over what I had before down here in the pencil with the charcoal. And what I'm aiming for here, I talked about making this be more floaty and so forth, but the way I have it right now with this big development here is that all these kind of mid-sized shapes and so forth that are down here can be like a great foreground. And then this thing can also be a foreground because it comes up from them. And again, I'm saying it's a thing, but of course we don't know what the thing is. And in non-objective work, you want to not know what the objects are. That's why it's non-objective or abstract. But even abstract was initially considered an abstraction of something in the known world that everybody would know what it was, but it had been changed or made more abstract, made less distinct as a specific form and more general, let's say, or hard to say because everybody abstracts differently, just like everybody draws differently. So here we are down here, and this whole thing kind of floats up like this. A lot of this is going to change. If I want to have a light foreground here, again, I'm making this sort of dependent on gravity here, as in this down here is the foreground, and I'll turn it around later and show you how the foreground looks being close to you, like it's close to me right now. You just standing there looking across what I'm doing. And sometimes it's good to draw with your other hand. I'm lucky that I'm kind of both-handed, much more left-handed than right-handed, but I'm also more practiced with my left hand for little things, and I actually do big things more right-handed, kicking, batting, so forth. So right now you can see it more easily if I switch over to my right hand. This is actually so easy to do what I'm doing that I can just, for the sake of time, like do things simultaneously here and make this happen. And if I happen to cross a line here or something like that, I can just go back in and work it. I'm going to also, because I'm making this sort of spatial, I'm going to make this meaning that it looks like you're looking at something. You're standing on the ground and you're seeing something else that is on the ground. I'm going to make these corners a little bit darker. They're going to become probably not so dark when I do my big smush, but I'm going to smush a lot of this. So we have a nice consistent variety of not only small lines, making small shapes. Okay, so that's the shape and form and line elements of art and design. And then we also have the smushed together light tonal value that is expressed here. And I'm getting these corners a little bit darker to actually, because making it darker is going to pull them forward, because darkest darks and lightest lights relative to the rest of the drawing come forward. So it's true about white and it's true about black, but it's also true about this gray here being a little bit darker value than this gray. This gray here on the edges being a little bit darker value than this. So value-wise, we're making this stand out a little bit more and the rest of it driving back a little bit more. If we want to even make it a little bit lighter going into our next step, I can pull more up, and if I wanted to pull even more up, whether it's with the graphite or with the charcoal, I can use what's called a kneaded eraser, and it's my favorite eraser. Again, it comes like this, it quickly changes to this. You clean it by doing this, and it doesn't have to be as big as this is, but if I wanted to make this lighter, as it contrasty went back behind this, I could do so by pulling this up just by patting it. I could also do my own patterning into this now and do some of my straight and curved lines. It's not making that big of a difference, but it's still fun to do, and it's fun to play with, and it's fun to show you that there are subtractive methods. You could even come in here and pull out some of these little shapes that have been created by all this scribbling. So these are options for your pencil first with your connection to the paper, and then your Vine charcoal with your connection to the paper in order to create something here that was never here before. So again, it's an ongoing collaboration between you and what you're drawing, what shows up, and the materials that you're using to do it with. Now we're going to go into our colored pencil, and in this one we're probably going to use a little less colored pencil than we have before, but what I want to show here is that I can start to tint. I'm looking for what I want to play with. If I want to just get in here and do something that isn't going to do too much, I'm going to first pick yellow. Not saying to do that, just saying that is an option, because the yellow is such a light tonal value that I can add color here, and I'm doing it lightly. I'm using these Prismacolors, or you could use some other softer color pencil. And so I'm just adding a little bit of color here, and I'm not changing the value particularly, but I am giving it color. And as soon as we give it color, any color, that becomes the most saturated color on the block. Okay, so right now this yellow is dancing around. Even though it's very light, it's hanging out, showing itself, because it is the most color that's here at all. And I'll show you how just this light application of it doesn't really interfere much. It's a little darker value actually than the white was, but it's not going to change the tone, which here is the light white being the lightest, this color white of the paper being the lightest that there would be, has just a tiny bit of gray in it from the graphite, and then also from the Vine charcoal. Okay, so here we have something that I think most people can agree is monochromatic, because it just has one color in it, and then the gray tones and the white of the paper, gray tones with the Vine charcoal and graphite. So opposite of this yellow here is purple, and I can give a little bit more tonal value down, or give a little bit more color down here, and now you'll see just a very simple two-color combination. And so that would be a two-color palette, and because this is a purple or a violet, whatever you want to call it, it has a little bit of white in it. It's like a lilac color, which means that there's a little white mixed into it. There's even more white mixed into both of these because the white of the paper is showing through, because I'm not yet, and I may not, obliterate the paper. Now I'll show you how a more saturated yellow coming down in here, possibly adding in a green as well. Okay, this is not particularly more saturated, but if I press on it a little bit, I'm going to get a little bit more saturation. You see, higher saturation just because more pure pigment than we had here, up here with this yellow. So I want to work kind of quickly here so that we can take these concepts straight into the picture and work with them in terms of space, in terms of near and far. So near we have bigger lines and bigger shapes, and the opposite for far would be smaller lines and smaller shapes. Okay? Kind of like the three bears. Foreground, midground, foreground. big bowl of porridge, little bowl of porridge, and a mid bowl of porridge, okay? So we're thinking, artists are thinking beings. I have this green, which so far we haven't put any green anywhere, but this is an already desaturated green. I don't know what they call this green. You would need to know what it's called. You just look at it and say, I don't think I can even pronounce what it's called, so who cares, okay? But it's a green, as you can see, that is a very not even a mid value, a very light tonal value. And I can just take that anywhere. But I can still get some kind of a contrast between the green and the yellow depending on where I put it, all right? And it doesn't have to go everywhere, although one of the ways that you do get unity is by having it seem like it's made out of one world. In other words, if there's gold on this planet, there's some gold everywhere. If there's blue on this planet, there's some version of blue everywhere. All right, speaking of blue, I might bring a little blue in here with this yellow, and then of course, if you were to be asked what does blue do when it combines with yellow, you would be sitting here drawing and looking at this. You wouldn't have had to be told or memorize it. Maybe you've experimented with blue and yellow before, and here we see that it's turning the yellow what? The yellow is starting to have properties of what when it combines with blue? There's places that it's just blue because there's just white that I'm going over. And there's other places where there's a lot more yellow, like right there, where it turns green. Okay. So again, I didn't fill in the whole thing. That's an important thing to realize. You don't always have to fill in all of your spaces. Now this blue is going to look nice with this purple. Why? Because purple is half blue and half red, or in this case this purple is going to be half of a light blue and a kind of pinky red, a rose type red, what I call a pinky red. So it's not so much the fire engine red that would have made this purple, it's this blue. Now what am I doing where I already colored it purple? Why am I going in there? Because the layering of this is something that gives way to something that reads then as more as form and more as texture, and it transitions. Another thing you can do is change the direction of your paper so that you can come back in and go a different direction with all of this. Okay, so this purple that's embedded now in with this blue, which can become more purple if I bring another type of purple into it. So right now I'm experimenting with my color through the colored pencils. And what's awesome about that is that it's very light, and I can experiment with it before I get to my oil pastels. So I'm going to go ahead and get to the oil pastels here in just a second. I think I want to bring some, interestingly enough, I think I want to bring some orange in here. And the opposite of the orange, if we were going to cut it down, I'm trying not to have this stuff in here be cut down too much, but I still want it to have variation in its color, in its hue, all right, in the colors that are in here. And I might want to even preserve some white in places that I had white rather than have to bring it back in. I can still bring it into the white areas with my white Crapaw oil pastel, but I don't have to because I've left it white. So I'm going to come up here. I'm going to be more desaturated up here. Why? Because there's graphite there, and the graphite is already a gray, and so I'm going to cut the value down a little bit, change it to a more mid value because of the gray, and then the gray, which behaves more than anything like a black or a blue, is going to desaturate the orange, which is opposite on the color wheel to blue. So you can find out so much by just working quickly like I am, and as you get some mileage by doing things like this, where pretty much you can, it's a win-win thing. You're loading lots of information into you about color and how it works together. Now I'm going to go in here and I'm going to desaturate this blue a little bit where I want to turn the edges, maybe make these shapes seem a little bit more like form. Watch this, I can go right over that orange and have orange on both sides of it. On one side of it's with the yellow, so it's an analogous color and it stays orange. And on this side, it turns a less saturated color, more of a brown. And I'm going to do that all in here too. And so I don't have a high contrast. I have a higher contrast between the orange being more saturated now, even though it's farther back. I decided to do that. Now I'm going to bring the orange in here with this yellow. It's going to appear more saturated because the yellow and the orange, again down here too, are friends. They are analogous, so they don't cut each other down. They pump each other up. And the ultimate pump up sometimes, one of the other ultimate pump ups, is when you go, and here I have this orange, and then you stick the blue right in next to it. Hard to stick it totally in next to it because I have the black line or the gray line. But see, this orange just loves hanging out with the blue. Loves it. This orange loves hanging out with the blue too. They're friends. But they're opposites, so they both bring something. It's like one person, you know, one of them brings the appetizer and the other one brings the main dish or the salad. They bring different things, but together they make one whole meal. So just having some fun now, just thinking, what do I want to do? And some of these little places, I'm going to go and put the stuff in here, and this blue will just stick out nicely because it's right next to orange. So it's going to be in this orange place, and it's going to be amplified by the orange. Nicely amplified by the orange. And in this one, because I have the format, I can take the tonal value all the way to the edge. And going quickly like this, you don't have to draw quickly like this, but you can draw quickly like this. Sometimes drawing really fast makes you make really fast decisions, or just decisions that don't even seem like decisions at all, because there's things that you're just doing it. You're not thinking about it, you're just doing it. I'm going to pull some of this to the edge here where I have some white, and then again this is going to be more saturated on the edge. It's going to be a darker value, as I left it somewhat up here, a darker value, and then I've still got some white up here where I can throw some blue into it, and that blue is more highly saturated than it's surrounded by and relative to the entire drawing. And so this blue is also going to pump up this edge and bring it closer to the viewer, closer to you as the drawer, as the first viewer, the first person. You're like an explorer. You're the first one to see this particular work that you do. You're the first one to play with it, and so you're the first viewer, and you make all the decisions. And interestingly enough, all the things that you do can very adequately, at least, be picked up by someone who views what you've done. Okay, went outside the lines a little bit, but you know what? Let's let that be okay. All right, I said there'd be some oil pastels, a little bit more drama, all this kind of stuff. I don't know how I'm going to make this feel all good and yummy and stuff, and also do it kind of quickly, but I'm going to go in here with some of this highly saturated orange, and I'll try to see if I can make it emanate from the bottom here, and still wanting to hold this whole piece together and have it also hold up with this bottom foreground. when I get the gamsol spirits in here, then I'm going to be able to do a blendy type thing. The only thing we're going to be wondering here, when I relied so heavily in the foreground on the charcoal and somewhat on the graphite, is whether or not the whole thing will hang together. So we'll see. That's the thing, you're always seeing what will happen, playing what if I do this? So that's why I say think with your pencil, think with your oil pastel. Just watch it happen. It's the biggest thing I have to say these days a lot of times is watch it happen. Watch what's happening and then respond to what's happening. Sometimes you're going to get back from it and you're going to hang out farther back from it and let it talk to you about what else it needs. So this is where you want to really kind of get fairly heavily layered with your oil pastels before you bring any mineral spirits in with a brush. And I'll show you what that's going to look like pretty soon. So this is really pumping up this color, and it's making it be far more saturated than the foreground. It's starting to make me pretty excited with all of its, I'm going to use a pink back here. I even want the top of this to kind of be a little less saturated, and so the pink is going to desaturate a little bit with this other brownier pink that it's on top of when it combines with it, and also when it combines with the other materials, meaning the other oil pastels and the charcoal, and also even though it's very faint now, also the graphite. You see that I'm not using a lot of black. I could, but I'm really trying to focus right now first on saturation, desaturation, and what happens. Oops, that's picked up a lot of other color. When you have, in this case, a very big contrast. This is so saturated, and this is very desaturated. The desaturation goes back, the saturation comes forward. I could end up using this. These I put kind of together, these whitey kind of things, literally white, a peach, a Naples yellow. I don't know what they're calling this, but like a very neutral yellow. Another word for desaturation is neutralized or made less intense. And this is a fun thing too. Here now, without the benefit or without, interference or assistance or whatever we're going to feel like the gamsol does to it, the clear spirits that are going to dissolve some of this and then blend some of this. We're going kind of heavy right now, going kind of heavy with it, and I am going to pick up a blue because I had some blue in here coming across here. So that's where the color pencils have shown me some of the things that I can do. I've experimented. I didn't feel like, okay, I'm getting the oil pastel, which is really heavy. I'm getting it in here, and I'm not necessarily knowing what I'm doing. So the colored pencils give us a chance to experiment quite a bit ahead of time with what we might do. And then they also give us a really nice underdrawing that kind of holds the variation, texture, change, and so forth. It makes a lot of things possible that might not happen. It makes a lot more subtle stuff to happen. And again, one of the things that's really, really important to me is the idea that the surface gets developed, and being able to use the oil pastels gives you a chance to kind of see what it'd be like to paint with oil, be able to paint with oil paint and so forth, because this is oil and this gamsol is a medium that's like turpentine, but it doesn't smell, although I would suggest having really good ventilation even when you can't smell something. It's good to make sure whenever you're using art materials, even if you're using acrylic and you think maybe that's not toxic, all of it is kind of foreign to your body, and you don't want it to build up in your lungs or anything like that. Okay, I think we're in pretty good shape, except for, this yellow's calling to me, to start in with the spirits, the clear spirits, which is the gamsol. And what I'm thinking here is I'm going to pick up, I think I might pick up a big brush here at first, and then just play with it, and hopefully I have enough. You see how fast this big brush really holds a lot. I've done it usually more so with a smaller brush, and this is holding a lot of spirits, so it very quickly changes it. And sometimes you want to stop before you get too far with it, like, woo, we're just doing this and then we're going to do it everywhere. But I'm going to kind of caution that and then probably do it myself. But it does work really quickly here. Let's see what happens on what's on the bottom on my brush, where I could use stuff here, or I could have it on a separate piece of paper where I might pull up some of this kind of wash of some of the oil pastel getting into my brush, and then I'm going to have less up here, and then I can kind of feather it through or sprinkle it through that foreground here and let it dance too, and kind of integrate them so they're not totally like, are we really in the same picture, or, you know, are we one world and down here is more saturated and down here is more textured and so forth, but we're still made out of the same elements, the same, and not just necessarily the art elements of color and value and line and shape and form and so forth, because it is a so forth thing. Some people even include things like time and so forth in the list of values, or pardon me, that was a mistake, in the list of elements of art and design. And when you think about film, it's very dependent. It's an art medium that's very dependent on time, on sequence, on, you know, and then of course movement can be one too. That you get movement with time, with that. Sometimes that goes over to the principles list, principles of art and design. Something that's created with line, shape, color. I am getting there, I think. It's time to kind of look at it, take a look at it, and let you look at it upside down, right side up. Going to pull that around for you, and then just add any other little things as we come to kind of the end of this particular construction, composition. We've connected, we've created, and we've collaborated with everything that we put on here, and then with all the materials that we have at hand to work with. So this is how it looks right side up to you guys, and then you can really see that the highly saturated foreground comes forward, and the lower saturation, the grayer, the white light value but not white value, goes back. If you want to pump it up, you can come back in with your values, and that's where some either black with the oil pastels or some black with the charcoal can make a difference, just one more type of thing, one more layer that again comes forward. And then if it feels like that's not integrated enough, then that's where we can come back in with some of the gamsol again.
was whispering